for Jay. We have a great anticipated guest on our roster today, RJ Nathan. And I've been so excited about actually doing this live with him. He's multi talented. Um, Last week, we were supposed to be doing a conversation with him, and he got called away because he's a choreographer and a dancer. Am I correct?
Yes.
And so, hey, things like that happen when you're busy. You got to go where the money's at, and I definitely get it. But we thank you, man, for coming back and joining us today. Tell us about yourself.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you for having me and for being so flexible in the heat of that moment
Yeah.
because it really was, hey, I need you to go out the country the next day type of thing.
Oh wow.
And, I just had to adapt. Like you said, where the money's at, you go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
When you've been committed, for a while. So thank you for being flexible.
No
Uh,
worries. No
my
worries.
name is RJ Nathaniel, which
Uh-huh.
is a combination of my initials, which is Reginald Johnson, and my middle name, Nathaniel.
Okay.
So RJ Nathaniel. And I'm also a junior named after my father,
Mhm.
who is no longer with us. He passed last year.
Oh, sorry to hear that.
No, no, no. It's a great thing because this is where the elevation and the push spiritually comes from.
Hmm, hmm.
Um, and so when you ask who am I, I'm just a continuation of my ancestors, of my elders who have come before me, who have called me to do great things.
Hmm.
That just so happened to show up in the form of the arts. Um, I've always been a creative from as early as I can remember, um, which again, if we're going there spiritually, if you are created in the image of the ultimate creator and you're here on assignment as a creator, which means you bring things to fruition that others don't see, that is a unique power and a responsibility that I hold very true. And I take my art very serious because of that creational spirit that I have.
Yeah.
And so that crosses different mediums, right? Um, on the obvious side, I'm a choreographer, creative director, dancer, choreographer, all those things. By degree, I'm an actor. I got my BFA in professional theater from North Carolina A&T State University, Aggie Pride.
Wow.
To any of the Aggies out there, um, and I also work in the medical field to where my creation shows up in the form of social skills with people,
Okay.
primarily doctors that I deal with. So wide range, right?
Yeah.
Um, I also own a company which is called Inward Discovery.
Mhm.
It is a mental health hub for creative artists and entrepreneurs who is seeking to unlock their untapped potential so they can be flourished into who they're called to be creatively or in the form of entrepreneurship. Shameless plug, we're going to be doing our first ever convention
Yeah.
this summer, July the 25th and 26th in Atlanta, Georgia.
Okay.
It's a 2-day conference, jam packed with workshops, expert panels,
Uh,
mental health services, everything. So, super excited about that.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and yeah, I'm just a server. I'm a servant of God's light, and my aim is to bring joy to the world through a creative platform.
Awesome. That's awesome. If you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
34.
Wow. Wow. Man.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
talking about survival to stability today, I was so excited because, I learned that you were in the mental health, what got you in there?
Okay, we're talking about survival, right?
Yeah. Well,
uh,
yeah, survival to stability, but what got you into mental health?
the survival part,
Okay.
the journey of growing up in a single parent home in the projects in the rural South of North Carolina. Um, Love my dad again, but he was an alcoholic. He was known to be an abusive man. Um, my mother, a adopted girl from New Jersey,
Mhm.
who she was raised by foster parents, and so there's the identity thing there. Um, so here I come, the product of these two individuals.
Right.
So the story. has always been a form of survival. Even to this point, I'm that what people will call, golden child, or like, maybe the savior of the family. I don't know, but there's a huge responsibility on my weight, on my shoulders, that I carry for my family. But that mental health aspect ties in because I've had to be able to balance and toggle between, you know, I don't want to call it dysfunction, but the cards that was dealt by being impoverished
Mhm.
versus the unforeseen reality of success. And so mental health was a way for me to pull myself out, based on my circumstances, and just saying that I wanted more.
Mhm.
And when I was able to do so through being the first person to graduate from college in my family, to, traveling the world as a creative, seeing places that, never would have been imagined from, a young black man like myself, I realized, like, wow, other people can utilize what I've been able to do to pull myself from that struggle to, surviving and thriving. And so, yeah, mental health was a true key
Mhm.
aspect in that. And so that's what birthed the idea of, like, I want to pass this along to other creatives who may have similar stories to mine.
Awesome. What was that like though, RJ? Like, you know, um, seeing your mom, in a single state, also dad not being in the home. Um, is it difficult for you to tie, I guess, what you would call stability, to the survival mode? Because when I listen to you talk about it, I see you go someplace with it. What is that like?
Mhm. For me, it's triumph. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? It's perseverance, it's resilience, it's who we are as black people,
Uh-huh.
who are disadvantaged in a country that was never suited for us to win. If you
Is it
think
still?
about constitutional things, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
And so like, I'm saying that now because I'm old enough to articulate it, but back then I didn't see struggle. I didn't see, you know what I mean? It was what it was. That was my experience. It wasn't until I was older until I was able to really reconcile, like, that's what that experience was in comparison to these individuals over here. And again, the arts and dance and things like that is what kind of pulled me into other environments to where I saw they were different from mine,
Mhm.
because I was the only black boy in a ballet class at
Mhm.
6 years old,
Mhm.
dancing with all white Jewish girls who
Mhm.
were rich and had both parents. And, it wasn't until I saw those things that I was like, oh, well,
Mhm.
this is different. Like, da 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 da. But I don't know. It all worked for me. You know what I mean?
Do you find yourself in a when you talk about this, that there's still a little boy inside you that struggles with being in a place to say, hey, I'm stable now, I'm able to, because there's a conversation sometimes that most people feel like they have to live in the triumphancy,
Mhm.
in order to remain, in a place of victory. But I
Mhm.
oftentimes find that, when I go back to visit, you know, uh,
The family.
my family, or even the survival part of a little boy that has been growing up trying to say, hey, I'm a man, it reconnects me to um, some of the pain, some of the sorrows, some of the hurt, some of the disappointment, some of the rejection, but it also puts me in a place to know how to minister effectively to those that are dealing with that.
Yeah. So for me, I've never had that specific experience with
Mhm.
it,
Mhm.
because I always looked at it as motivation to do more. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? I didn't look at it as a disadvantage. I just saw it for what it was. And I was like, oh, I need to do this over here. I need to, you know what I mean? And so, though I can feel the shame or what could be seen as the disappointment in the lifestyle or the upbringing of my survival as a young man, um, I never held on to it in a form of like, woe is me, or, it's just, it always was fuel,
Mhm.
you know what I
Mhm.
mean, for me to feel motivated and encouraged to just do more, you know
Yeah.
what I mean. And so whereas it would be sorrow for other people, it for me it was joy. It was the thing that kept me going, and in a state of like pursuit towards something.
Mhm.
Because had I had the opposite experience, I don't know that I would be who I am today. You know what I mean?
Mhm. Yeah, that's powerful. I wrote down something today because I was listening to just listening to like the thought process of what was getting ready to occur, and
Mhm.
listening to God to say, hey, speak to me and let me hear what it is that you're saying. And I wrote down, you cannot evaluate the significance of what you are going through until you are able to study what you have gone, or until you're able to study where you're going to, if that makes sense.
That's spot on, and that is exactly what it is for me.
Hmm.
It's
Wow.
literally it's only when I can look back.
Hmm.
It's data. The human mind is conditioned, or the brain rather, is conditioned to store data, information based
Absolutely.
on experience.
Yeah,
You know
absolutely.
what I mean? I can't. There's nothing that's gonna happen from 20 minutes from now that my brain it wouldn't, because it hasn't experienced it yet.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so for me, yes, very much on the reflection and being able to look back and say, oh,
Mhm.
okay, then I'm able to maneuver. But at the time, you're just experiencing, as you should. It's life.
So when you travel to, and you're talking about in terms of traveling, excuse me, from survival to stability, what would you like people to know? Be- You know, and what do they look for in the experience? Because oftentimes there's a bridge there that
Hmm.
doesn't connect. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Because I'm over here, I'm surviving, I'm surviving. But to get to stability, there's an in between. What does that look like?
People have to let go.
Mhm.
We're not in control.
Mm, mm. Wow.
Why are you fighting for something that you are not in control of?
Mhm,
You know what I mean?
mm,
And it's only until you realize, hey, this what do they call it? Sacrifice, surrender.
mhm,
I'm not in control. This path is set, is chosen. All I have to do is just be.
mhm,
You
mhm,
know what I mean? And so the bridge, what I want people to know is, one is necessary.
mhm,
It's
mm,
necessary. Everything that you are experiencing is necessary.
mhm.
You cannot get to where you're going without whatever it is that you are experiencing. And that experience is nothing more than a mirror reflection of what you are internally feeling,
Right.
thinking, or whatever, manifesting into physical form. Yes.
Wow.
So, with that being said, the moment you change perspective and thought to know, hey, I'm not in control.
Mhm,
I just have to just be. That same freedom will reflect in your physical experience, and that will take you out of the state of just surviving to a space of thriving, because you realize, hey, God is in control. Hey, all I have to do is just be. All I have to do is show up. All I have to do is be obedient to what is instinctual, what is innate, in spirit,
mhm,
not in flesh. Because
mhm,
again, we're having an internal experience lived outwardly in
mhm,
physical form, and so it's necessary you experience it, go through it, because you need it right now in this
mhm,
moment. It may
mhm,
not look like how you thought it would be,
mhm, mhm.
but it's okay. Just experience, and when
Do
you
you,
get to the other side, same
mhm.
thing.
Do you find though that sometimes with letting go, I think the trauma in letting go is because we have a falseness about remaining in control. And I say a falseness about it because a lot of times, you're controlling everything else but the situation that you're in. Does that make sense?
Makes
And it
perfect
masks itself in so many different areas. It pushes people into being people that they not really are. That I,
exactly.
yeah, they're not who they really are. They become someone else because, hey, I'm still trying to remain in control of who I want to be or what I think is better. And I think, and you find it a lot in our culture.
For
The
sure.
identity crisis that we battle with.
Mhm.
And so so what does that look like? Because it's still a trust factor. From going from survival to stability and the road between.
There's a few things. Um, we have to relinquish control. Yes.
Mhm,
Um, but I think it's also important to know that it's just, I don't know how else to say it other than that it's just necessary.
mhm,
You know what I mean? And that's um you have to go through it.
mhm, mhm.
It's just, you know what I mean? Like they're like,
I get what you're saying. I know where you're going with it, but
you
yeah.
know what I mean? Like, because I can say this, I can say that, I can say that, but it's not up to me. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? The people who are listening, who are literally in the midst of the storm, who are in that valley on the way to the climb to get to the hill, who someone who is in the wilderness and they're disheveled and don't know how to move or where to go, sit still.
Mhm, mhm,
It's necessary for you to be exactly where you are. There
mhm,
is no like, you just have to experience. And it's only when you internally feel that you are ready that motion towards a new reality will happen.
mhm,
It
mhm.
is an internal experience. So I guess that's the only thing I can share out of that, is that if people just realize that this will age and wither away and go,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
your spirit, the true essence of who you really are, is innate, is infinite, it will live on.
Mhm,
um the challenge in the human experience is to find the duality and harmony and balancing flesh and spirit.
mhm, mhm.
You know what I mean? And so the toggle happens because, I mean, hey, born in sin, shaped in iniquity. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like, it's you know what I mean, you will have fleshly desires, you will have temptation, you will have things that will always constantly remind you that you are human.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
experience that you're having will remind you that you are human, that you are not God. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that experience in that wilderness is
Yeah.
for you to realize that you need something outside of yourself,
Yeah.
in order for you to get to where you're going. So
As you were speaking, I'm hearing the scripture. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all thine heart, and lean not to thine own understanding, but in all thy ways acknowledge him, and he shall direct our path."
that's
I
it.
feel personally myself is that we're dealing with God is constantly moving. He's constantly moving. And I also feel like and at some places we should sit still, but then I also feel as though we should also be listening for the voice of the Lord on how to move and
Yeah,
when to move.
that's why you're
And
still, so you can hear.
yeah,
That's why
absolutely.
you're still. That's why you're alone. That's why you're in isolation. So
Yeah.
that you can remove noise and excess distractions from worldly things,
Mhm.
and God can speak to you clearly through your innate spirit, your soul, that voice that lives within you that people tend to ignore.
Mhm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you wonder why the repercussions of your own choice, because God also gave us wisdom and discernment,
Mhm.
and also gave you choice.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what you choose will manifest itself once again into your reality, but it'll always circle back. God will always remind you of who God is.
Yeah. You're getting ready to do a conference. I heard you mention it, and it's called Harnessing the Light. What does that look like for you?
Me doing this,
Mhm. Wow.
walking boldly in the truth that I know who I am,
Mm.
without apology or filter.
Mhm.
Um, it's not a shame. I'm not ashamed to speak of the light that is within me.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, it is a part of my gift. It is a part of the reason why I'm here. It's why we're all here. It's what everybody is trying to discover. You know what I mean? They want to
Mhm.
harness that light within, but
Mhm.
it don't look like what we think it looks like on the outside.
Mm.
Does look like isolation. It does look like, um, I'm gonna be over here and people are over there drinking and smoking and having sex and traveling and doing all the worldly things that feel good in the moment.
Mhm.
Um, but that's also a part of the experience. You just have to um, get to a place where hey, my light may look different from someone else's light, but if I harness the light within me and let that be how I show up, I'm going to attract exactly who, what,
Mhm.
and what I need.
Yeah.
The right things will fall into place. So,
I have a question for you.
mhm,
When you talk about harnessing light and you're talking about survival to stability, presently, are you happy?
I'm beyond happy.
What does that look like?
It looks like peace, be all understanding.
Mhm,
Um, it looks like a sigh of relief, like when your shoulders just drop.
mhm,
It looks like a feather that's just floating downward,
mhm.
but it never touches the floor.
Take me back for a second, RJ, to just moments when you had to walk through that survival mode to get to that stability. Because I feel like sometimes we talk about being there,
Hmm.
but we don't never talk about the journey getting there.
And then once again, the journey is within. Um, and for me, um,
Was there? I'm going to ask you a double part question real quickly.
uh,
Was there ever a place in your journey that you struggled with yourself?
the whole time, that's
Okay.
what I'm saying. It was within.
Mhm, mhm.
It's not it.
So the war is within.
The war is within. Everything that you are experiencing internally is manifesting into your physical experience. That's why your life is the way that it is. The
Mm,
things that I was internally battling, things that questions, I kept the same thing kept showing up in different forms of people, places, things, and ideas.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
And so once I realized that that was the thing, that I couldn't blame this person, I couldn't blame that experience, I couldn't blame that job, it wasn't only until I took ownership
mhm,
over my life and understood that, hey, if I want something to change, the only thing I can control is me.
mhm, mhm,
You know what I mean? And because that is an internal experience, it's hard to describe because that may look different for everybody.
mhm,
You know what I mean? Some people hit rock bottom as far in the form of depression,
mhm,
in the form of anxiety, in the form of suicide.
mhm.
Some people go to a point where, they don't know how to pull themselves out. When really, for me, even though I was struggling, um, I don't know. There's always been a very clear voice
Mhm, mhm,
internally that just was like, "I got you. I'm
mhm,
holding your hand the whole time. You're good.
mhm.
This experience, you need
Have,
this."
have there ever been a point though in your journey and in your walk that you lost people along the way, friends, associates, like
And it was
people,
necessary.
enemy, people that had an idea of what they felt you should be or who they thought you should be, you
It
know.
was who I was, and
Mhm,
they were mirror reflections in my reality. And it
mhm,
wasn't their fault because they kept showing up in different forms.
mhm, mhm,
So I'm looking around, I'm like, well, why does this same person, why do I keep attracting these type of friends?
mhm,
Why do I keep Like I just experienced this with Rob, or I just
mhm.
experienced this with Vanessa. You know what I mean? It's like,
So you would say that even in your walk, in your journey to stability, that there were continual cycles and patterns that continue to perpetuate themselves.
yes, that made
Mm,
it very apparent that I'm in a cycle.
mm, mm.
That
How do
I'm
you break that
in a
cycle and say, I choose me now? Because this is where people are at. How do you break
Yes.
the
How do you
cycle?
break the cycle? You have to be aware that it's a cycle.
Mm,
If
wow.
you don't know that you're in dysfunction, you will stay in dysfunction.
Mm,
It's all you know.
okay.
It's not until you can raise the awareness and look around and say, I'm in dysfunction.
Mhm, uh-huh,
I want something else
mhm,
for my life.
mm,
I want something else for my experience, for just any and everything. And when you have that awareness, it's only then that you can then do something about it. Now you start to make different choices. Now you start to make different decisions about who you're around and the things that you say out of your mouth,
mhm.
the things that you think about, the things that you spend your time on when nobody's watching. You
Why
know
do
what
you think that this is such a taboo? Um, Even this conversation, because you don't hear this conversation in church. You don't hear this conversation.
How much time do we got? The church and oh my God. Okay, so religion, right? Let's the construct of it. It's just there as a form of control.
Mm,
It's a way to uh, unite people into a system of belief so that we don't go haywire.
mm,
It's a form of civilization. Um, the teachings, depending on what your religion is, also shape the person.
mhm, mhm,
Um, the issue in that system, just like the same system of the U.S. Constitution, is that is rooted in old ideologies, forms, all types that isn't necessarily progressive to where we have grown to as a civilization.
mhm,
And so if I'm going off of laws from 1869
mhm,
and 2025,
mhm,
and the foundation was already not inclusive of everybody,
mhm,
you know, then there will be demographics of people that will be left out.
mhm,
There will be people who won't subscribe to the church
mhm, mhm,
because they don't feel seen in that demographic of people based on its foundational principles.
mhm, mhm,
Um, Religion is the same way. The thought of it, yes, is amazing,
mhm,
you know, um, and I think it's necessary because who's to say where we would be, you
mhm,
know? Um, but I don't think that that is the conversation here. This conversation is about spirit.
mhm.
The conversation is about, are you going to honor spirit?
I think.
Religion will tell you one thing um, that will only appeal to a demographic of people when if we have to save souls,
Mhm,
and that can't be boxed or limited in underneath the confines of this whatever. You
mhm.
know what I mean? I think that's where the church lose people at because it's confined to a religious practice. You know
I
what I
think a
mean?
lot of times, what we don't find, whether it's in the church or just in religion, period, is that we and you got to hear this in the spirit that it's given because this can definitely be misinterpreted.
Mhm.
So we choose to go after Christ, which is nothing wrong with that, in my opinion. Nothing wrong with that. But Christ came to teach us about who we are and who we're called to be in order to go and be fishermen and like-minded, men of connecting one to another.
Mhm.
Oftentimes, what we find though is that we search everywhere else for information, but we never search the one pertinent place that we should be searching, and that's us because
Inward
we have it.
discovery.
Yeah, yeah,
Inward discovery.
absolutely.
God lives in you.
Mhm.
The same Jesus Christ that came then is in you now.
Yeah.
We are continuations of our ancestors' wildest dreams. We are the reclaimed torch that
Mhm.
is going forward. It nothing's new under the sun.
Correct.
What
Yeah.
it does is it separates you from the responsibility and the calling that you have because you're looking outwardly from this savior to come and save you when you're the thing that is
Absolutely.
going to
I
save
get
not
that.
only you but everyone else. Because once we all realize that, we'll realize that it's a synchronicity here. The
Mhm.
world is a reflection of the vibrational forces of the collective people.
Absolutely.
You know
Absolutely.
what I mean? And so that's why I said, do we have time? I can come from a scientific standpoint, I can come from ancient texts, I can come from a space of, religion and politics,
Mhm.
where we want to go. But at the core of it is it's an internal experience, it's an inward discovery.
So, to tie this up because we are almost out of time. To tie this up,
Hmm.
I'm traveling. I'm traveling from a road to, from survival to stability. I'm traveling, and I'm seeing everybody get there except me.
Mm.
What would you tell, the ones that are viewing, um, what to look for in the journey, first and foremost, uh, how to break the cycle, secondly, and what to be aware of as you journey to that place called stability?
Yeah. Um, First thing is keep going.
Okay.
Keep stepping 1 foot at a time, 1 day at a time, 1 second, 1 minute, 1 hour, 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year.
Mm,
Keep stepping forward. Don't stop. Keep
yeah.
experiencing the experience as it comes. And what you will discover is there will be hills and there will be valleys. There will be ups, there will be downs. There will be times of darkness, there will be times of light. But keep pressing
Yeah.
forward.
Mhm.
Um, and what I would like to share is as you're experiencing the hills and the valleys, that journey is continuous.
Yeah.
The real answer is you will never get to the end.
Mm,
You will never get to the end. It is a continuous journey because even when we transition, there's someone else who will pick up the torch as we did from our ancestors and move forward and continue to experience
mm,
life.
mm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, so you can rest assured by knowing that it's never over. There's no rush.
Mhm,
There is no end goal.
mhm,
All I'm doing is experiencing life in the hills and valleys.
mm.
All of it is necessary. All of it is in due process for where I am intended to be for the next person. And that understanding brings peace.
Mhm,
It brings surrenderance. It brings understanding because it isn't about, you know, this thing that there's no arrival.
mhm, mhm.
Circle of life, is continuous.
Yeah.
So have peace in knowing that you're right where you need to be and just keep going.
I love it. I love it. There you have it. This has been truly an honor to have you on and just to discuss with us what it looks like. There's so many people here in this world that are plagued with just surviving. And I hear it all the time, when I'm coaching with people, when I'm, doing ministry or conference, how's it going? Oh man, I'm just surviving. And I'm like, what does that look like? Because it seems defeated,
It
you know.
is. It's in
And
their energy.
yeah, and so I thought
Even
it was a great
statement.
topic. Go ahead.
No, even in that statement, hey, I'm just surviving.
Mhm,
Look
mhm.
at how my body language is
Yeah, yeah,
downward. The demean, like sound projection of vibrations, things that we say out
yeah,
of our mouth,
yeah,
again, ripples to the edge of the universe, comes back and it shows up.
yeah,
You mean, and so you change the language,
mhm.
change the vibrational frequency of what you say. It'll. I'm doing. People laugh at me all the time when they say, "Richard, how you doing?" I say, "I'm amazing." Even in moments where now it's so habitual and a habit
Mm.
that I become amazing.
Speak those things, just speaking
You have to
those
speak
things.
it.
Mhm,
Changing
mhm.
the perspective will change your reality.
Correct. Oh, wow. Powerful, powerful. I love it. Well, we're going to do it on purpose. We're going to do it in purpose, and we're going to continue to do it with all power. This is JL Stone. I'm your spiritual master life coach. Nathaniel, excuse me,
Yes,
from
sir.
Atlanta, Georgia. Listen, I'm telling you that if you're in the Atlanta area and you have not gotten your ticket, where can they go to?
If they can follow me on Instagram
Okay.
at Inward Discovery,
Mhm.
the ticket link is in the bio, or you can follow me on my main page, which is RJ Nathaniel.
Yeah.
All of the ticket information is there, all the promo materials for flyers, who's the
Okay.
speakers. It is going to be revolutionary.
Awesome. Awesome. There you have it. We're out of time, but until next time, God bless you. Have a blessed day.
Peace.
All right. So I'm going to